live from Bristol, Tennessee. That's what we're going to call it tonight. It is cold out.
It is, yeah, it's horrible.
This morning
cold.
I had to kick the dog loose from the fire hydrant. It's that cold. So I think it was 13 this morning or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. I thought it was around 20, but man, yeah,
and it's going to drop. And then next week, 60s again, and then dropping again. It's winter. We're going back and forth, and most of us will probably be sleeping on the porch at Christmas, like 72, sunny. You just never know in this region. But hey, we are glad to be with you tonight. We've got some great topics. We've got some fun things to discuss. Some of which end with the name Biden. As most of you know already, Hunter has just magically escaped the jaws of justice, which he pretty much has been doing the entire time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me move that window.
Yeah.
That's a fitting meme, isn't it? It's not even a meme. That's just fact. That's just what's happening.
Fact. It's just fact. But look at how he has aged.
I know.
I mean,
bad. I mean, he was bad coming into office.
Yes, but Jill has not been kind to him.
No, no.
I mean, the abuse is real. He can't even get a necktie on now in 2024. Yeah. And then today, what you sent me today blew my mind.
Oh yeah,
pull that up.
I have to pull that up. It was shocking.
This is the president of the United States who just gave $1 billion in aid to Africa, which of course is going straight to the people that
we have to show this first.
Matter. Okay, go ahead.
Babylon being a confused senior citizen played his $1 billion exiled Nigerian prince.
Yeah.
Oh, but no, the video. Oh gosh, it's here. Let me pull it up.
This is our president
talking about it. I got to move it over to the window.
Here we go.
Our president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. Here, let me move that.
We also appreciate the fact that the implementation of the project will provide important opportunities for Africa's development.
Oh, I kept waiting for him to smack his head.
Agriculture,
narcolepsy is real.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, come on, old age. The guy's a fossil. Look at him. Eyes closed again.
Along the corridor. Tanzania is already undertaking.
I wanted to see the head bob.
Yeah. The nod.
Yeah.
It's kind of getting there.
Priorities and other bilateral and regional commitments.
He is so close.
In closing, allow me to reiterate.
It's nail biting. It's like, come on, just fall over me. Fall over.
Oh,
bless his heart.
Prosperity.
Shame on the people who have,
who have propped him up.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're with. Well, I wouldn't necessarily call I wouldn't necessarily call this group world leaders.
Yeah.
They're emerging. They're trying to get their stuff together as countries, but you still, you don't fall asleep in the middle of a summit.
No.
I mean,
he can. He's done it several times. I mean, he's got a hard time or had a hard time.
So so first of all, I know it's big news. It's all over, and the left is having an absolute a conniption trying to justify this. And I know you've all heard it, like on The View and everywhere else. It's like, yeah, but he didn't really lie. No, he did. He lied. He said, I'm not going to pardon my son. And then he pardoned his son. That's, by definition, when you do something you say you're not going to do or have done something that you say you didn't do, those are lies.
Right.
So I don't know how you sugarcoat that.
Well, they say he had a change of heart and he reconsidered.
Lies.
Yeah. It's just lies.
Right? I mean, it lies. And there's a part of me that believes that he's gonna have to probably pardon everybody in his family as well and have that on the back burner. I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how he could pardon himself and everybody else, but that laptop had stuff on it that incriminates him, incriminates his family members. And so I don't know the legalities of it all, but if you get rid of it, that evidence, that case, but that evidence implicates other people.
Yeah.
Can't you go after those other people with that evidence? I mean,
that's a good question. I think this is why they're considering, and there's rumblings of blanket pardons. everybody is saying that this is Trump who's going to weaponize the justice system against his political enemies, just like they have weaponized the justice system against their political enemies.
Yes.
They're afraid he's going to do the same thing that they've been doing. And so folks are saying, oh, we got to, pardon Fauci, get preemptive pardons.
For what? I mean, this raises the question I think everybody needs to ask. If they're considering this, what have they done wrong? You don't pardon somebody preemptively unless they have something they need pardoned from.
Well, I think anybody who's been watching the news knows what Fauci did, knows what Liz Cheney has done, knows what Adam Schiff has done.
Absolutely.
So they know what they did was wrong.
Yeah.
They're saying it's just to protect themselves against a tyrant, but it's actually, this is the law and order presidency that we're going to get. And the law and order presidency with a Kash Patel as an FBI director, with Pete Hegseth as the SecDef, with a Tulsi Gabbard DNI, running the DNI. These are people who are not going to hold back against the deep state because they've been railing against them for a long time.
They're not politically correct politicians.
No.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, they're not insiders. These are the ones
these are the ones that are not. They're not going to pretend to be woke so that they can gain favor. They're not going to pretend to be something they are not, and it's important because that kind of. And I mean, we'll see. Listen, everything seems like it's rolling into a place of finally we might get some justice. Finally, we might know about the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah.
Why is that? Everybody's dead that was involved with that. I think.
Yeah, I think most people are. Yeah.
So at this point, what's it going to hurt? Oh, that's right. It's going to be a black eye on the American government. We don't want to do that. We don't want people, because they'll lose trust in us. I think what's happened is we've lost trust in them because of the lack of transparency over the years and years and years. I mean, the UFO files is that's a great thing. We all waited like, oh my goodness, what's going to come out with this, and what came out should have been earth shattering, but it wasn't. It wasn't. Yeah, there are things out there we can't explain. And everybody went, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
You've been lying to us for years. We've known this for years. And it's like, and I think social media has played a big part in that. Obviously. I mean, more people are getting their news through social media than they are through the legacy media, right? I mean, you were telling me that MSNBC, CNN, they're done.
Yeah, MSNBC is at their lowest ratings in, I think, 20 years. Let me pull up that one. Another critical ratings low. And this is as a Fox News, but it doesn't matter. In the key demo as well, 25 to 58 demographic. They only managed, let me make sure I get this number. This is on November 26th. MSNBC had the lowest rated non-holiday weekend among advertisers, coveted demographic of adults 25 to 54 in 20 years. They managed only 38,000 average demo viewers.
Wow.
38,000. There are streamers out there with every night 38,000. And y'all, by the way, be sure to share this content and all that. So that
we'd like to be one of those.
We'd love to be at the $45,000, $50,000.
We would love to rival. In fact, I would just issue this as a challenge. Make us MSNBC.
There you
just
go.
Give us one weekend of MSNBC stats, where we're at 34,000, because that's not unheard of, not unthinkable.
No, not unthinkable.
All you got to do is say the right thing or have the right header, drop the right name, and then people are going. I mean, there are girls making waffles that are getting 38,000 views.
Right.
That's true. I mean, it's not rocket science. At least we're offering content.
Well, here's the other kicker is that Chris Jansing reports Inside with Jen Psaki, the Rachel Maddow show, and Joy Reid's Readout, which I can't imagine that she ever had 38,000 to begin with. But either way, I don't know that she did. But they all shed at least 50% of their audiences among adults aged 25 to 54. And the reason they covet these folks is they have money, money, and they're not, don't entirely have their mind made up.
Don't you think some of that is just the sheer fact that people are going, we were lied to.
Yeah.
They've been lying to us. We can't trust them. They are so in the tank. Their coverage of the election was so biased that it's just, you can't watch this. And I do. I mean, if you remember that night, we were watching our favorite, I think Ben was watching Fox, and we were watching the other
NBC, I think is what we were watching. Yeah.
And I had on CNN. or MSNBC over here.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just so biased to see how, these people are all but ready to hang themselves after that election. They're just so defeated. And it's like, wait a minute, none of the conservatives that I know would go out and hang themselves if it went the other way.
Exactly. There would be the same response. We would be bummed out, but we would go back, put on,
get up and go to work. You know?
Yeah. We'd strap on our boots and go back to work and
pay our taxes.
Right. And get working on 2028
right.
for the next election.
That's right.
But
and
for
pray.
these folks, they're talking and pray. Oh yeah.
Pray hard.
Yeah.
Oh.
And we still need to, by the way.
Yeah.
That's not something that, well, you know that. I mean, I know you weren't saying that, but
so what do we have coming? So we get Cash Patel in, we get Hegseth in, we get obviously Tulsi's in, and we get this done. Do we get to know things that we've wanted to know for so long? I want to know the list from P. Diddy. I want to know the list from, Epstein. I want to know how deep this rabbit hole goes. They just pronounced Beyonce as the musical influence of the century. Beyonce.
Yeah.
I don't even think she writes her own music. And yet she's the influence, right? And then I hear stories and see things on social media about her being a high witch and about her, speaking of high witches.
There's a photo I was looking for. Go ahead. You're talking.
Is your photo of the Wicked cast? Because those two have fallen off the
No, it was a photo of, you were talking about Beyonce being this, influential, whatever. And the photo was comparing, old art, if you look at whatever is Monet, or Da Vinci and
or like Jean-Claude Van Damme, or
well, no,
some of the,
I wouldn't consider him an artist, but
some of the high rollers, back in the day.
But it was comparing then back in the day to now, and you saw about the banana that was taped to a wall.
Yeah,
it sold for like $6 million,
yes.
And the Bitcoin guy bought it and ate the banana.
Yeah,
I mean, this is and there was another photo of a guy staring at 3 blank canvases, and they said no art degrees, influenced centuries of society and of civilization, and then the art degrees showed up, and you get a banana taped against a wall and a
blank canvas.
People slinging mud on the wall, and
right.
Just the silly stuff. And the music is no different.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
Beyonce's no Beethoven.
No, no. And
she doesn't hold a candle to Bach.
No, in fact, last night the Annie Moses band, and it's a family band that's traveled. Their mother and father wrote a hit song for Sandy Patty, who's a famous, singer, Christian singer. But I will tell you, I have not seen musicianship like that in a long time.
Yeah.
And it was all Christmas music, but it was just so good. They're just so good. And they do all kinds of stuff to inspire the arts. They have their own little school. They have I think it's anniemoses.org. You can go to and support them. We're not getting paid to say this. But I was amazed. And I play guitar. I was in rock bands, and I'm not a huge fan of the strings, like, cellos and violins and fiddle. We call them fiddles down here.
Yeah.
But that group made me a believer. It was amazing what they were able to do with those old Appalachian instruments, kind of like the old chamber orchestra stuff. And oh gosh, yeah, anyway, why I brought that up, they have produced their own little Broadway show. And she was saying, because, the woke can't own everything. They can't own Broadway. The woke can't own, it's almost like we've got to get back in there and take what's ours. Take it back,
Yeah. Do you think that people like, and I mean, I do, but do you think people like Oliver Anthony? I don't know if you've listened to Oliver Anthony.
Yeah, sure.
It's not stringed instruments and all of that, but it's it's an old school form of music done in a new way by a new personality.
Yes.
In a different way, in a unique way.
Yeah.
I mean, that I consider art.
Yes.
You know?
I agree.
And
he wrote it.
right.
Like where somebody like Beyonce, who
She's a personality. Somebody else is writing it for her.
somebody else is writing it for her.
Mm-hmm.
She's just regurgitating what she's told to do by the label. You know, really, the musician of the century should be, you know, Sony or whoever those people are that are arranging her and promoting her and everything else. They've made her.
Yeah, they did the same thing. This is bringing up personalities. Justin Bieber is much the same.
Oh,
Britney
yeah,
Spears, the same.
And listen, not to say they're not talented. Sure, they're talented. They are talented.
You heard him sing without autotune?
No, but sure, they're talented. Let's just say they're talented.
Yeah.
But you can find that level of talent across the street or in the kitchen on you know, like
Yeah.
she's not that talented. They're not that phenomenal. And so I kind of just scratch my head at it. Like, how in the world is this person influential other than they've sold a lot of albums?
Right.
Right.
Well, I think it's the mixing of politics and culture. You know, the influence
Yes.
is a political power, and politics has become the culture,
Yep.
which is unfortunate.
Very sad.
It's very, very sad. But when the politics becomes the culture, the cultural icons that have been created have to get involved in the politics, and therefore they carry their influence from their, you know, made up music that's either written by a computer or written by some, you know, knucklehead in the corner.
Sure.
Using the same three chords that.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Same formula, verse,
Right, right.
chorus,
Say
verse,
all
chorus,
that,
bridge,
exactly.
chorus. You know, like it's all the same.
Yeah.
And you know, it's formulaic music. It works. They've done it for the last 100 years since rock and roll, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't changed any. It's just changing faces. But the thing that really gets to me now is you look at what's going on. You know, when I was a kid, Kiss was a big deal. And it was always like, oh, you don't want to listen to them. That stands for Knights in Satan's Service. And I'm like,
Yeah, I always heard that too.
yeah, which, okay. You know, first of all, you got to look at like the gimmick. It was a gimmick. It's a gimmick.
Oh yeah, yeah, it is.
But with these people, I'm not so sure about the gimmick part. And I don't know, you know, if you're listening tonight and you want to chime in, we would love to field some of your opinions, I guess, some of your questions. But, you know, I really have this underwhelming sense of like appreciation for what's modern, you know, and Taylor Swift is fine, but not really. I mean, it's always about a heartbreak. It's always about it. You know, it's always about, and it's just enough already. And they're all the same.
There's the funny meme out there of, you know, the girl who's never had a successful relationship is going to tell you how to vote for president, sort of thing.
Right. She can't even get her own stuff.
Who can't even get her own stuff together.
Yeah. But
man.
I do. I wonder, like, number one, you know, I saw a interview. Well, it was like a tape of the same people that did Crosby, Stills, Nash. They were talking about with one of the A&R people at one of these labels. Do you guys still take the music, the masters, in and pray over them with a coven? Like before they release this music, they have witches pray over this music.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah. And I began to, and I've heard that. I've heard that a billion times since I was, you know, 20, 15, 18, whatever it was. And it's always been this prescription that they do where they come out with this something great, and then they rally around their troops, and, you know, they try to almost. So music is an interesting thing, and this could be the rest of the show. But
you're not going to get a lot out of me.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I used to be musical, but you're not going to get a lot.
But, you know, biblically speaking, we're told to sing more than we're told to pray. And I believe there's a reason for that. And I think that reason is that God created music. In fact, the most, you know, the nemesis, what people would think of as God's nemesis, Satan, right? We know was, in fact, like the worship leader of heaven. He was in charge of the music. His body is made of pipes and reeds. Like he can't go any he's like Homer Simpson with his own theme music. You know what I mean? He can't go anywhere without having boop, 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 playing. He's just made of music. And it's such a powerful force and such a powerful tool that it can lift your spirits. It can dampen your spirits. If you've ever, and if you don't really understand how it all works, what I would suggest you do is put on a horror film to the soundtrack of, The Grinch or something like that. Like take the music from a happy movie and put it over a horror film, and the horror film is no longer a horror film. It's boring. It's like, oh, this is
a lot of that in my work with video is you can take one video and completely change the tone of that video.
Yes,
the person saying the same thing with a different type of music.
Yeah, music really gives everything more of an impact.
Yeah,
and so for me, yes, I know, and have read books and everything else. When I was a kid, there was a couple guys that came out, and backmasking was discovered, and they were like, "Oh, listen to this. If Freddy's the devil, like they had their techniques or whatever that they were like, can you hear this saying, worship Satan when you play it backwards?" And I, even as a kid, I kind of went, I don't know that I ascribed to all that. I mean, yeah, if you put enough garble backwards, enough words backwards, you're gonna end up somehow with something. But I do know that there's a spirit that attaches itself to music, whether it's praise and worship or for the enemy. And here's the thing, and I'm just going to say this, there's no such thing as a middle ground. I mean, we talk about crossover music, but you're really either singing about Jesus or you're not, right? So anytime it's "She Broke My Heart," that's not Jesus. And take it even a step further. Anytime it's kind of good, happy, like you take "Jesus Takes the Wheel." Right?
Okay.
Now, if anybody sang that but Carrie Underwood, okay? Carrie Underwood is a believer in Christ. So she's saying, "Jesus, take the wheel." I believe her, right? I don't know where she was at that time in her life when she wrote it, but if you take that and put it in the hands of somebody who doesn't know Christ, that's no longer a crossover song. That's no longer a song that glorifies Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's because the heart behind it matters so much.
Yeah, but I mean, songs that sing about life, because you can go a lot of ways. You can go Cardi B, or you can go, Jason Aldean, or you can go Oliver Anthony, right?
Sure.
And so, there's nothing really wrong with.
No, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but music is really a powerful tool that Satan uses because he is music. He was the master of music. God created him.
Well, I think that's why they are able to use.
It's a vehicle.
Right. That's why they're able to use these cultural icons, like we were talking about before, to manipulate people politically, which is to manipulate them culturally.
Right.
Through, by luring them in, the Sirens song, right? That sort of thing.
Yes, and that's a good way of looking at it. It's almost like, parents, listen to what your kids are listening to, because it does shape them emotionally. It does give them visual context for living a different life than God would want them to live. And speaking of which, we've got a whole big thing on a movement that is trying to happen that we've kind of looked against, but it's this 4B movement. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this 4B movement. It originated in South Korea.
Yep.
And I guess the B part is loosely the word "bi," which means no there.
Right. It's the 4 no's.
Yeah, 4 no's.
Right.
And the 4 no's, which this just cracks me up. No to being married, no to having relations with men, no to it's all feminist.
Yeah.
Pure feminism.
Yeah.
On like radicalized feminism is what it is. Because even a feminist would be like, all right, I'll have a husband, I'll have kids, right? These women are saying a no to any of that, right?
Yeah.
A woman in, I believe, Washington has bought into the 4B movement to the point, and it's all because Trump became president.
Yes.
And part of this stems from a statement by Kamala that Trump was going to ban abortion, period.
Right.
Trump's coming in and he's just going to ban it.
You know, I actually had a conversation with there's a person in my, we'll just say a person in one of my spheres where I operate, and she is a very, very, very left-wing person, and sat there and told me how much she hated Donald Trump because he was going to ban all abortions, which led to her telling me that she had abortion, was expecting me to say, be chastising to her, and I just simply told her that
I'm sorry.
Yeah. that you went through that, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry you were told that was an acceptable thing to do. And so I'll pray for you on that end. But the they say he is going to do this with such such certainty that they've listened to it from the mainstream media telling him that's going to happen, and he's never said it. And in fact, I wish he took a harder stance than he does. He says
he's kind of he's kind of washed his hands of it, like, it's the state's decision. So. Yeah,
but
go ahead.
I want to show a video of I guess you would call it this is a version of psychosis, if you want to call it that. These people are following the 4B movement, and one of the here, I'm going to turn the music off. They put creepy music to it, and they sit here and shave their heads. So there's literally millions of women who have done this simply because Donald Trump was elected president of the United States, and it's making I see it as making a version of a sacrifice. You're sacrificing something for your movement and your culture and your whatever I don't know. Their politics has become their deity. Their government representatives have become their deity. And this is, otherwise, in some cases, pretty women shaving themselves, shaving their heads.
Yeah, like she looks like Demi Moore back in the army.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that? Yeah.
What was the one?
What was that movie?
G.I. Jane.
G.I. Jane, yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, G.I. Jane. Oh, of course.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Of course. So here's the thing about this. This woman in Washington has decided that her only recourse, because they're going to ban abortion, is to go ahead and have her stuff removed, sterilize herself.
Yeah.
Okay. And these women are stocking up on abortion pills. They're stocking up on, like it's over. It's the end of the world. So these narrow-minded women who might think that they're enlightened, but really you're showing how narrow-minded you are, that you are only concerned about you, have gone ahead and now they're approaching this with, we just need to sterilize ourselves or whatever. And my answer to this is, I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound so harsh, but bear with me. Let them. Go ahead, 25-year-old who has no course in life set, who doesn't know if you want to have kids or not, who doesn't know what your future holds. If you want to get sterilized because you're afraid of abortion being taken away from you, okay. Because in my mind, as a man, I don't think I want you raising children.
Yeah.
And you know what will stop this perpetual wokeism and this nonsense is for them to not procreate and instill those values in their kids, because it's sick, and that sickness will breed that sickness.
It will. But you know what this is also doing? That they don't realize it, but this is also forcing them to do what a lot of conservatives have been saying. You don't want to have, promiscuous relationships with a lot of men, and you're doing it as a...
Yeah, this is literally playing right into...
Good. That's what you shouldn't.
Right. Go ahead and abstain.
Yeah, absolutely abstain.
Go ahead. We've encouraged that for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So that you don't have unwanted children.
Right.
You're not aborting babies. Abstain. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, if you're doing it to your husband, that's a different... because that gets into some dicier territory.
And my question would be to these guys.
Well, yeah, these guys are the soy, these are the soy boys, low T type of fellas.
And again, here we go. Okay. Because you're not, that what was that on Braveheart where he says we're going to institute prima nocta. Remember, if we can't get the Scottish out, we're going to breed them out, right? So first night, the nobles have the right of any woman on her honeymoon over her husband, so that they could spread noble seed instead of commoner seed or whatever it is, right? We're going to breed them out.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the opposite of that, but it still holds true. We're going to not breed them out, and they're going to die out.
Right.
With this generation of woke people who refuse to sleep together, who refuse to, who are going to sterilize themselves so they don't
We're
have
all
kids.
anti-marriage in most instances.
Yes.
I mean,
And so, okay. So what do we have? 20 years of, watching the number decline of this woke idiocracy that's like, I mean, does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. I mean, if you say that I want to have just nonstop abortions, in protest, I'm not going to procreate with men or with my husband or whatever, simply because a guy got elected president for 4 years. And yeah, if you are that erratic, it is probably a good thing that you're not reproducing.
And you should probably right now, while he's, in office and everything's going to fall apart and it's going to be so terrible for you, sterilize yourself. I mean, go get it done.
I wouldn't say that.
That way they can't go back on their word.
Well, yeah.
And they can't now one day wake up and be like, everything's so much better now. Let's have a baby. No, thank you.
Yeah.
We don't want you raising somebody to be you.
Yeah.
Who's taken this crazy lunatic maniacal stand on things that don't pertain to anybody else but you.
Yeah.
Because this is the voting bloc of the Liberal Party, the Democratic Party. It's all about me.
Yeah.
I don't care what happens overseas. I don't care about our economy as long as I'm getting fed. I don't care about anything but me and my rights and my ability to make my money for free or whatever, take advantage of who I can. It is so self-centric.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the entire ideology is about selfishness and about me and about...
Isn't that ironic, though? That is exactly where the enemy wants us. I mean, you think about all the times in Scripture where God is... basically, let me just encompass the Word of God. Think outside of your box. Prefer other people, right? Give everything you have to people. Give it away. It doesn't matter. Like, help. Stop thinking about yourself. Everything in the Word of God is that. Everything in the Word of God is encompassed in this. Love somebody else above yourself, right? Jesus was the ultimate statement of that, where he gave his own life for us. And he never even met me. Well, I mean, he did in heaven, right? Like at one time, before I was formed in my mother's womb, he knew me. But you think about that kind of self-sacrifice, and then you look at people who are willing, who are willing to put their agenda above what's better for anybody else. And it just boggles my mind. And they do it, and here's how good the enemy is. They do it in the name of compassion. They do it in the name, we're calling evil good and good evil.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
It just, how can people look at this and go, how can they deny the Scriptures when you can see it in such clear, it's like exclamation point, at the end of the Word of God, the end, like boom. And we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Right in front of us. So, okay, you talk more.
No,
I need to catch a breath. I'm angry.
I was going to hit our headline as a
go for it.
Sharp left turn, but we're talking about redemption. We're talking about people that in politics we've had the lies. It's always the let me pull this up here. So it's sidestepping. It's trying to convince you that what was true. And in this instance, Pete Hegseth, he's been accused of some pretty serious stuff. And Megyn Kelly brought him on, and he didn't just talk about those things that happened, which did happen to a certain degree. He was accused of I think on YouTube we have to say grape. We can't say the full word.
Yeah.
Or SA, right?
Yeah.
He was accused of all of these things, and Megyn Kelly approached him about it. He hit it head on. He talked about his rough and rowdy past, and he talked about how he had transformed his life through his faith with his wife, in hand in hand with his wife. And I think it sets a powerful message. And he says you can believe it or you cannot believe it. But I feel like I kind of want to play the whole thing.
I think you probably should. I mean, obviously a lot of people have seen Megyn Kelly. She's amazing. But it's important because this is, in a nutshell, what can these people change? Yes,
yeah,
they can. And can a man change? And here's somebody that has had a pretty checkered past.
Mm-hmm.
Good looking guy.
Yeah,
very rich.
Yep,
had any woman he wanted. That kind of thing.
Was unfaithful to two of his wives and his current wife before they were married.
Yeah. So this is like the backstory of, oh boy.
Yeah.
But he says something in this interview that he never said before.
Mm-hmm. And
that's the game changer. So yeah, go ahead and play it.
A person accusing you of any sort of misconduct has gone on the record with their accusation. It is all anonymous from NBC, CBS, The New Yorker, the usual suspects.
Yeah. So pause because it's important. This is what amazes me. It's an accusation anonymously that's leaked to the big four, and they run with it because they don't like him.
Right.
Now, when we have ironclad things about a laptop and the president's son, that's Russian, and it's not true. It's
right.
Right.
The first response is lie, 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 deny, deny, deny.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can.
Where this is not even. Yeah. This is an anonymous accusation. Like,
but he paid a settlement so it wouldn't be released.
Right. And I could have called in.
Yep.
I mean, it could have been me, anonymous. Right. I mean, it's crazy to me that they'll run with anything to smear somebody because they're attached to the Trump administration.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Are having person after person go on the record in your defense about your character, from Will Cain and Dan Bongino at Fox, Joey Jones at Fox, the entire Fox and Friends crew this morning standing up and defending you.
Dozens of people from my vets organizations
Medal of
that were
Honor
with
winners.
me everywhere.
Yes. So that, just so the audience knows, but we do need to go through
Sure.
what people are saying so you have the chance to address it. So the first is this alleged rape that took place in 2017 at a hotel out in Monterey, California, where the allegation is that you were the keynote speaker at a Republican women's conference, that you were drinking into the wee hours, and that a female so-called handler of yours, who was meant to see you from A to B, went back to your room with you to shepherd you there, found herself inside the room, that you allegedly blocked the door. She, quote, remembers saying no a lot. And the next thing she knew, things got very fuzzy, and you allegedly raped her with her husband and children in their own hotel room down the hall. The police investigated. They chose not to charge. The DA did not see probable cause to charge this case. We found out from the police report certain exonerating details, which none of the media will report, like
That's
you
key.
said it was consensual.
Right.
I mean, that's key. That she found out through the police report. Read the police report. There's exonerating details right there that make this go away.
But they don't need to. The left doesn't need to read the police report. I've watched the folks on X, the really wild individuals, and they're already taking the same narrative with him that they took with Trump, that they took with Matt Gaetz.
Yeah, so it's over the top.
Yeah,
it's
it's
just we don't need any of the facts. We just need the headline.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
There was no drug, and she wasn't drugged in any way, and she's on camera looking totally fine, according to the police, according to eyewitnesses, and according to her own husband, to whose room she returned at 4 a.m. She was fine. She was not slurring. She was not stumbling, and she apologized to him for being out, saying, I fell asleep on somebody's whatever. And that's what you say she told you she was going to tell the husband. All right, that's the setup for those who haven't been paying attention. Did you rape a woman in a hotel in Monterey?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've been honest about that encounter, starting with law enforcement, from the beginning. I may have been drinking, but I was cognizant enough to remember every single detail. And I'm not here to say that my conduct was good. Being in a hotel room with someone that's, not the person you're with is not okay. I own up to that, and I've had to own up to that, and that's been difficult. And my wife's amazing, and she knew about it, but going through it again is not easy.
Yeah, that's that's the other half. They're dragging his wife through it.
Yeah.
They lived this already. Now they get to live it again because it's the broken record, I guess, because he's in politics, and that's sad.
It is, but I think that this is going through it again. They went through it once, and now they're still married, because this was before they were married.
Right.
They're still married. They're raising a family with lots of kids.
Right. Lots of kids.
And he's got a
gaggle of kids.
Yeah, he's got a whole gaggle of
Yeah.
them. And so they're going through this again, but what is going to give a couple the strength to get through something like that? And he talks about it here in a minute.
Yeah, here we go.
And so, yeah.
Lee, I went through that process with investigators, eyes wide open and honest, because I knew I had nothing to hide. It's a really unfortunate situation.
I'm going to play it a little faster.
And ultimately, they dug into everything, as you said, everyone that was there, all the video camera footage, all of her testimony, husband's testimony, my testimony, and they looked into it and said, no way, we're not charging on this at all. In fact, there's other things that hopefully could come out in the future that would benefit. Our team is benefiting from more information. So we always want more information coming out of this, because the more information that comes out, the more people realize what this actually was. And ultimately, it's never fun to have your name. All they want is your name in the headline with that allegation. That's all they want.
That's right.
And then once they do that, they run with it. They don't care about all the details that you just pointed out.
And when they summarize the case in the secondary reporting, they never include any of the exonerating details.
Not at all. That's to be expected, though. That's how our media today operates. They take one thing, blow it up, and then extrapolate ad nauseum on it. But notice how that story has sort of faded away, because there's nothing to hang on to there, which is why.
Okay, but what about, because you did pay her off a couple years later. She came back threatening and wanting some sort of a settlement, and you paid her. So was it a substantial settlement, and why did you pay her?
I paid her because I had to, or at least I thought I did at the time. I was newly married. I was up for potential jobs in the administration, so my profile was higher. And listen, she got lawyers that reached out to mine and said, if you don't come forward and if you don't pay money, then ultimately we're going to out him.
Okay, here's another point with this litigious society that we're in, which is a horrible, horrible thing, that he paid. This happened to as countless people. They pay these settlements. They got to stop paying the settlements. They pay these settlements to not have something released, and what happens later on?
It gets released
it anyway.
And
they do it to him anyway.
You make a very valid point. Here's the thing: when you are trying for self-gain, self-promotion, self, right? Like just like we just went through, you're gonna do whatever you can to preserve your image yourself, rather than. And I think this is why Trump won in a landslide. The transparency factor. The man had nothing to hide anymore.
Yeah.
They dug and dug and dug and dug, and they have nothing. And what they do have, that people are like, well, he's a felon. It's like, not really.
Yeah.
You're like, no. They are bending every rule to get that. Every rule. Yeah. Nobody in the history of history, has been convicted of that. Like,
right.
So they're making it up. But I think that's one thing that people go, well, I mean, I hate his tweets. I don't think he's very politically savvy, but he seems to be a pretty honest millionaire.
Yeah.
Which is pretty rare.
Billionaire,
yeah. Which is pretty rare.
Give credit where credit's due, man. He's got billions.
He might. I mean, there might be things that he filed bankruptcy to get out from paying that, or whatever.
He even admitted that.
Tax loopholes. Yeah.
Yeah, he admitted that in the Hillary debate.
Yeah.
She said, "Oh, but this guy that takes advantage is paid zero." He said, "Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do." And so do all of her donors and all the people
exactly right.
Yeah, so does George Soros and so do all those. Yeah.
So I mean, at least he's like, I mean, I'm going to admit to it. If he would have come out with that instead of paying her off at that time, it would have been like, oh, this is going to ruin you. Well, I don't know anymore. I think people are waiting for that because these guys are living. It's almost like they don't ever make a mistake.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way they pitched him. So there's some people that are effective at hiding it, and I firmly believe that it's the deep state and it's the establishment that has the funds to hide these things, and they don't let it get released, or they hold it over that person's head so they vote the right way, do the right things, and they get by with it. So you're telling me that somebody like a Lindsey Graham had never, colored outside the lines a little bit, that sort of thing?
Right.
I mean, come on. He has, but he plays nice with the establishment. He does what they want him to do. He gets rich and he doesn't get in trouble.
That's right.
When you push against the system, you do. And they will come at you. All that money that's used to protect those people will get diverted, or another chunk of that money will get diverted to crush the other people that are going to threaten their power.
That's exactly right. Go on with this because it's about to
We
get
were in the
good.
middle of a Me Too movement. I had a great job at Fox and a wonderful marriage. And I did it it's not what I should have done, but I did it to protect that. I did it to protect my wife, I did it to protect my family, and I did it to protect my job. And it was a negotiation purely to try to prevent that. We paid a sum. I'm not going to disclose that amount, but it was. You don't expect to go through something like that. You obviously feel like you're being used because of your public profile. There are plenty of people that have gone through that. The sad part for this is, though, that what it does is it cheapens the instances where there's real sexual assault. Like, it's a real thing. It's a real problem, including in the military, which is something I will address.
That's a big statement.
Yeah.
The problem with this is it cheapens. I mean, what he's saying is this stuff really does happen. This isn't one of the instances.
Yeah.
And it's sad because this is cheapening one of those, is cheapening the instance when it's almost like the crying wolf.
Yeah. Well, and he says that it is a problem in the military, the actual acts happening, but the military also does the knee-jerk reaction, and it opens up the window for people to use it like this woman has to her advantage.
It's weaponization.
Right. Weaponizing something that is very serious.
Yeah.
And but he makes a good point here in a minute I want to get to.
Okay.
Very directly in the military. Hasn't been sufficiently addressed what some women in the military go through. And so when you make allegations that are proved to be bogus, fully investigated and cleared, and then you extrapolate that, it harms other instances where it's very real. And
it undermines the credibility of other accusers. Okay, so that one we've dealt with. But then come the flurry of allegations about your personal life. And I think it's admitted, at least in your divorce proceedings, that you did cheat on your first two wives. You're on your third marriage to Jen, a former colleague of my own at Fox, and yours too. And your hookup with this woman in Monterey happened when you were with Jen. So that's 3, right? And there are a lot of women at home and men who will be like, it's a no, right? He's too much of a serial cheater. Like, how can we put a guy in this position who's a serial cheater? So is that a fair characterization of you?
I think it would have been. It was a fair characterization of me before I truly was changed by Jen and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I mean that. I mean, people cannot believe that if they don't want to. But if you look at me and if you know me, if you have watched us walk into Colts Neck Community Church and Pilgrim Hill Reformed Fellowship, the churches where we've attended, that have truly, I'll never forget a sermon that my pastor gave, Pastor Chris, who's a dear friend of mine, where he talked about most people miss Jesus by 12 inches from their head to their heart. I grew up as a Christian. My mom was on Fox and Friends. She's wonderful Christian parents. I intellectually was associated with it and understood it, but never really lived it. And it was those moments in those places in my relationship with Jen as we grew together in Christ that I've become a changed man. Am I a perfect man? No. Was I a perfect man? Absolutely not. Do I regret those things? Yes. But is it who I am today? No. And I'm just grateful for the grace of God that gives me a new chapter. And I knew stepping out in this that would be part of what would come at me.
Was that scary?
It was part of the calculation. Sure, but what's the alternative? That people with somewhat difficult pasts can never step up and try to serve the American people and serve a president who was elected?
Exactly. That is one of the biggest statements he made. Aside from saying, yes, I went through this. My wife and I knew we were going to go through this. We were prayerfully considered this, which I don't know if he said that yet or not, but he says it in this thing. But this is a tactic that's used to take good people who have a checkered past, which a lot of people have a checkered past.
I don't think anybody doesn't.
Exactly. And anything that you've done, in your adolescence or in your younger, wilder days can be weaponized against you to crush you from taking on greater responsibility and serving people once you've overcome those things. That's this is a monstrous example that's being set for people. Like, look, yeah, it hurts, but if you've got a good wife, you've got or a husband, if you're a woman going into it, you have a God-centered life, and you are prepare yourselves through your faith,
Yeah.
to handle those things. Yeah, go serve.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the fact, your secret sin is going to be exposed on the rooftop, right? Like it's almost like I sit back and go, your past is going to be dug up, whether you're in politics or not. It's there. Thank God that I'm post or pre-internet. You know what I mean? Because I would definitely have some footage all over the web of me doing stupid things when I was younger, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel really, really bad for so many of these young adults that are living their lives on TikTok and doing this. I mean, you imagine in 20 years when those videos are still out of these young women and young men doing the things that they do on the internet. Dad, was that you? Oh yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. I was at a low point.
It literally is forever.
It's forever.
Yeah.
That's right. It's forever. And, in this instance, I love, I'm changed. Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
He did that. And you can believe me or not believe me. But anybody that knows me knows that I've changed. And what more could you ask for?
Yeah.
I mean, there's...
And we've talked about it before on this show that we're not... These people aren't pastors; they're leaders. We don't want a pastor. We aren't voting for a pastor. We're voting for a president,
right?
And even in that, even with a pastors, there's a lot of pastors out there who have turned their lives around and have come to the right side of it, and they use that as part of their message. Yep. Why is it you can do it in a church, but you can't do it in politics?
Well, because we're supposed to be forgiving. You know what I mean? But there again.
Well, that's what I'm saying is we're supposed to be forgiving.
But the church is generally the only hospital that shoots their own wounded, right? So like if you go in front of your church, and I've had friends that have done this. I've never had a moral failing. I've never done money embezzlement or anything like that when I was in ministry. But I know a few, not a lot. That's an overstatement, but I know a few people that have. And there's a process of restoration that they walk through when this stuff happens. It's not to say that they can't ever be in ministry again, or they're completely they're trying to disqualify him from. I mean, just think about this. They're trying to disqualify him from serving the public in government capacity, right? A place that is so dirty.
Right.
A place that is so when you've got, the beloved Bill Clinton who did not have relations with that woman.
Right.
Right.
And never flew on Epstein's plane.
No. I mean, what are we worried about him for? Really? What? Yeah. Okay. So he cheated on his 2 wives. I'm going to say Bill Clinton probably did too on one wife multiple times.
Yeah. Multiple times.
So I think that's kind of I don't know.
But there's a difference between Bill Clinton. He said, okay, yeah, I never should have done that. I never should have done that. But there's no indications of his behaviors ever having changed.
No.
He carried on with the same lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's that way with a lot of folks.
Yeah.
If this guy is making this proclamation, especially to the evangelical population, to the Christians that voted for Donald Trump, he's now got to prove that to them. And he will. And he'll either be right or wrong. But it's a good thing that he's saying, these are all the things that I've done.
Well, that's the other half.
Everybody knows.
That's part of repentance, right? Is to bring it to light, to admit it, to recognize it was a mistake, to say I'm sorry, which he's done to his wife, and they've moved on as a family. And I think in my mind, who in the world am I to judge if his wife has if they've made peace?
Yeah.
Right? The people that he hurt the most have walked through it with him. and the people that don't know him are sitting back in judgment. That's not fair.
Yeah. No,
Right.
it's
But
not.
that's what happens in the church.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Right. So,
Yeah.
so it's no different. We live in glass houses and we throw stones at people all day long.
Yeah, we said sometimes we're like an angry kid with a slingshot.
Right. Right. I mean, so it's almost like you sit back and go, every pastor in ministry here that wears a suit in the South has got a problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%.
Every person in ministry has got a problem. Like we've all got our own things that we carry, our own, it's like, oh, that's a sin. No, it might not be a sin. It might be, I overeat. I mean, something that simple, which is a sin, right? Gluttony is a sin.
Right.
So, but we all have our own little things, our own little, a hitch in our giddy up. His happens to be one that, the wages of sin is the death of two marriages. Right.
Right.
I mean, so literally he's paid dearly for that lifestyle. And now he's saying, I don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Is there more? I want to hear
Yeah.
more.
There's a little
You
more.
can't have made any mistakes in your life or reconciled for them or asked for forgiveness for them if you want to serve in another capacity. And my wife and I got together. We prayed about it a lot and said, we know the slings and arrows are coming. We're going to lock shields. That's why we're together on the hill. We're together everywhere in this process. Because if we can't do this together, then it's not worth doing. And having that assurance in Christ and with a partner where this is ride or die for the rest of our life, no matter what, is life-changing. And I've never had that perspective before. And I did that foolishly as someone who came home from wars and was untethered from, accountability and all over the place, all over the map, until, we just got a couple of horses. I don't know anything about horses, but it's a beautiful exercise. But what you realize is you've got it when you handle them and you handle them properly, you've got to prove that you're kind of the alpha. They got to want to follow you. And one of our horses is a little stubborn, and we got a trainer that comes over, and sometimes they got to yank on the harness. And I feel like sometimes God had to yank on me a little harder to say, Pete, pay attention here.
I think
this is your
people,
purpose.
especially guys coming back from war, look for the answer in a bottle and eventually find out the hard way it's not in there. And maybe it's in the Bible instead of the bottle, right?
I think I'm going to use that. Yeah. It actually is. Like, I've read the Bible before. This is the first year this year where I've read it through cover to cover, in addition to devotions, in addition to daily prayer time. And you realize how foolish we are as individual human beings, untethered from eternal truth, untethered from the wisdom of the Bible, from the wisdom of the patriarchs, to the judges, to the prophets, to the disciples, to Jesus Christ, to everything that happened. When we don't know and contemplate and start our day on those things, we start them focused on ourselves or our needs or our wants or our prides, all of which are destructive. I mean, I talk to my kids all the time about this. There's sin equals slavery. The truth, the Bible, equals freedom. And I've created plenty of problems for myself. But I know here sitting, I'm a liberated man by the gospel of Jesus Christ and the partner that I'm with. And people can take that or leave that and believe that or not. I know that in my core. I know how we started our day this morning was in prayer, and it's not going to stop. And we hope we get a chance to serve the country in the process.
So what do you say to people who say, well, you are nominated to be Secretary of Defense, and in this position, you'd run a military where they court-martial people for infidelity. So how do you look at those guys and say, I will judge you, I will pursue these charges against you?
You follow the law as it's applied. I mean, I don't know exactly what instances they would point to and when, and what that process would be in the National Guard, and I'm sure that will be litigated. But my point is, my job is to follow the law, the UCMJ, and I would do that.
Which is what he's supposed to do.
Exactly. Well, and he was National Guard. In the military, you do get court-martialed, or at least Article 15s for infidelity. So if you cheat on your spouse, then as a soldier, then yeah, you're UCMJ. There's actual laws where you could be kicked out of the military for it, which I don't think is a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean,
I really don't think it's a bad thing. In fact, I don't know if I ever kicked anybody out for it. I definitely, I may have chaptered somebody out for it.
I mean, think about this for just a second. It's simple. You're honoring your commitment.
Yeah.
You make a commitment to somebody, and in the military, they're going to court-martial. Oh, that's ridiculous. The military needs to stay out of the bedroom. Hold on a minute. It's not a bedroom issue. It's a character issue.
Right.
And I think that's where people get, it's just, You can't. It's a character flaw. Infidelity is a character flaw. Well, he doesn't make me happy. You don't know what he does to me. I know you made a promise, and I know you're breaking it.
Mm-hmm.
So you tell me, what's more important, your word or your feelings?
Right.
Right? No, I mean, abuse happens and stuff like I get that.
Yeah, it's different.
That's a totally different animal. But these people that are like, well, I don't know, it just kind of happened, and we just hit it off, and it's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just fell out of love, or we just
Yeah,
it's
no,
like,
you shouldn't have been there. You shouldn't.
have you really tried?
Right.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean, or even like you don't love your spouse at all, but you made it. And I honor those people
Yeah.
who don't love. They're no longer in love. They're no longer happy together. And I believe God can rekindle that.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not happy, but we're going to stay together because we made a commitment.
And we're going to keep trying to fix
We're
it.
going to keep trying to fix it. Right. Like, okay.
I mean, I think that speaks volumes about his wife as well.
I do too.
To go through something like that before you're married, it's the clean out. That's a clean out.
Oh yeah.
That's
That's a clean out with benefits.
exactly.
So
you did it. I'm out. I'm done. And go on but no, we're going to stick together. We're going to get through this. And
she could have. He's rich.
Oh yeah.
She could have banked on her way out.
Well, not if they were just dating. I mean, because
that's true.
Yeah.
Not if they were just dating. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an easy.
But yeah, I mean, it would have been an easy, we're done.
Yeah.
But she fought, and there's just a lot to this. And I don't know if this happened before or after that interview, but what a great evangelical tool he was on Megyn Kelly, who has millions of listeners. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so now, Bible buying on a massive uptick after decades of decline in religious practice.
I think this doesn't have anything to do with Pete Hegseth,
No.
but it's along that same vein that, people like Pete Hegseth, who lived a wild life, and I can speak from firsthand knowledge in the military. Can be a wild life.
Sure.
It's full of testosterone. It's all this.
Yeah, it's
kind of
all the
stuff.
things. Yep.
All those things.
Young men.
Young men being young men, and you got a little money in your pocket because they pay you pretty good, like relatively good. And yeah, you do some stupid things. But now in this political environment, people are looking for
Answers.
something.
Yeah.
This. Everything's combative. Everything is this. I think people sense the good versus evil fight that's going on in our culture and in our society. And how cool is it that these numbers are great. Sales of Bibles in the United States have surged 22% through the end of October. They've sold 14.2 million copies. I found that roughly 28% of U.S. adults now identify as religiously unaffiliated. Despite this trend, Bible sales reached 14.2 million copies in 2023, a significant increase from 9.7 in 2019. By October this year, 13.7 million copies had already sold. So we're going to surpass what they did in 2023, but the entire number is up 22%. And this is as regular book sales are up 1% or down 1%, I think.
Yeah. Well, it is the bestseller. Always.
It is. Yeah.
Perpetually, right?
Right.
But I think you touched on something before the show, and I'm gonna take it a step further. You touched on the fact that people are searching for answers. There's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain right now. I think, when we sit back and go, yes, this glass is full of leftist tears, I don't believe the leftists are looking for answers in the Bible.
Right.
I don't,
Well, yeah, you're right.
some might, but
I feel like there's some people that are coming around though. Not a lot, but there are some, I'm sure.
But I think what is happening is we are seeing with our own eyes the over spiritualization of everything. And I think people are going like, wait a minute, when you start to see, and on Instagram and everywhere else, there's feeds of Taylor Swift making Satan signs or whatever, right? Like it's just this constant barrage of demonic activity. And the Last Supper, at the Paris Games, right? Like that whole disgusting display that everybody in the world saw and went, wait a minute, or everybody, some song went, yes, that's so great. No, it's actually not. Like, I think you're seeing though the war, if you will, like being brought to the mainstream instead of being it was so quiet and subversive. It was like a whisper. And now it's raging and we can see it. And I'm reminded of this, like what we see as far as spiritual conflict in the world is much more in the heavenlies. So when we see a spiritual battle happening in the world, what's going on in the atmosphere, spiritually speaking, is much more than what we're seeing. And I don't know about you, but like we see it. You can see the spiritual war, whether it's the parades or like it's everything that God says no to, man is saying yes to, but it's not man saying yes to it. It's the enemy who has poured into man over the centuries to try to get man to step away from God. Yeah. And man is listening. And so we keep talking about this course correction. America needs a course correction. Well, towards what? And people, back to good old American values or the way things used to be. We need a court. No, you got to take it to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
To where it was founded on a belief in one God who sacrificed his only son, Jesus. And that's the correction that America needs. And the enemy is going to do everything he can to keep that from happening, right? He has been. So,
and you see it in the language of vilifying Christians that somehow, they are, I mean, it's, yeah, it's, I'm trying to think of some specific examples.
Well,
I see it's almost like sensory overload when you scroll through X.
What would be interesting is to find out, like, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Like, I wonder if it hasn't stuff to do with the end times in Israel and what's happening in the Middle East. And people are hearing the messages through Christians, through believers who are saying, Jesus is coming. This is all happening. And it's not spurning people. Like, I wonder if the book of Revelation, if they broke out the books instead of using the whole Bible, I wonder what the best-selling book would be. I wonder if people are buying it for Revelation, if people are buying it so they can read the prophecies in Isaiah or what it is that's driving this, because this is a big uptick.
It is, but I would be willing to bet that. So I've pointed out, and people probably may have seen this, but Russell Brand, one of the largest people on the internet, one of the largest guys on the internet converting to Christianity, talking about his baptism. We've talked about Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson gets millions of views. George Janko has millions and millions and millions of views, and he is spending almost all of his time talking about his relationship with God. The what are they called? What's their name? The father and son who do apologetics on college campuses. They're getting billions of views on TikTok. They're getting millions of views on Instagram. Charlie Kirk is very open about his faith. Charlie Kirk,
yeah.
And he is now on
Joe
TikTok.
Rogan has been asking the questions and has been,
This is this pushback against all these evil things that have been going on in our society, these corrupt things that are in our society and in our culture.
Yeah.
And this is God coming into some very conspicuous places to shift that tide, and it's pushing back. And I think
it's amazing. He's using imperfect people.
Exactly. Right.
Pete Hegseth, David.
I mean, and that's the thing. Leaders, us in this realm, right, here on earth, you're going to have one eventually.
Yes, he's coming.
But in the interim, you will never have a perfect person. You will have ones that do a good job. You'll have some that are a little more eloquent than others. You'll have some that are, stronger than others, better politicians than others, whatever. Some that are terrible, but you ain't never going to have a perfect one. And no matter how much the media tries to spin it as a perfect person, there's going to be one perfect person. We ain't seen him yet.
Right.
Right.
Well, they're going to try to.
You got to get over some of this silliness and recognize when a Pete Hegseth turns his life around.
Yeah.
Opens up to millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people and says, here are all my faults. I'm laying them out on the table.
Yep.
If he fails, he's going to fail. And he'll be shown to be a
fraud.
A fraud.
Yeah. Yeah.
But otherwise.
But we don't put and I think this is the other, we don't put our faith and hope in Pete Hegseth.
No, absolutely not.
Just like we don't put our faith and hope in Trump.
No.
And So I think overall, though, that, this is really telling of the times that we are in. Like the gospel will go forth. Everybody is going to have an opportunity to make Jesus the Lord and Savior of their life. And, we're seeing this happen where Bible sales are way up. And I wonder that of course is in America.
Right.
I wonder globally where we're at.
Oh, the church in Africa is growing
The church
exponentially more than
underground church in China is half of China. Like, I mean,
Right.
it's huge. And so you got to wonder where we're at as far as making disciples throughout the world. And yes, the fastest growing religion in the world is Islam. However, and I'm speaking mostly to Christians here. The Christian church has to be underground in a lot of places. Islam does not.
right.
And so when people say, well, Islam's growing faster than Christianity, I don't know that we can really gauge that fully, because a lot of churches, a lot of places in all the Islamic countries, you can't be like, I'm a Christian. A lot of them, you can't say that,
Right.
So these people are forced into a place where they have to not say what they are, so they can't be counted. And if you can't count them, you don't know if they're a believer or not in Christ. And so I don't know how many millions of people are believers and followers of Christ in places where they can't admit it. So maybe those numbers are just a little off, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, it's great to see this, though. Man, it's great to see this.
I was pretty amped up when I saw it.
Yeah.
That's a good sign for our country.
It's a great sign for our country. And I'll tell you, if you're one of those people that bought a Bible because, why don't you go ahead and read 1 John? It's a great book. Go and then go to the Gospel of Matthew or Mark or Luke or John. It tells the story of the life of Christ from birth to death to resurrection. And remember when you read this that, the 12 that knew him, his 12 disciples, were all cowards. Once he died, they scattered. They ran. They hid, like they were in trouble. And then something happened to them when they saw his resurrection, when they saw him. And that is proof positive that he was who he says he was. That he rose from the dead. He took these 12 guys who were cowards and made them lions, and they went out and spread the gospel all the way down to being willing to be put to death for it. You don't die for something that's a lie. You just don't.
No, nobody's nobody in all. None of them ever denied, obviously, and
Right.
nobody in history has ever been willingly given up their life for a lie.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
What's the famous quote from it was the guy during, I think, Watergate, and he said, "I know the Bible is true because 12 men went to their graves,
Proclaiming the word.
proclaiming
Yeah.
the word that
We
word of
can't
God."
even get.
And he said we had some of the most powerful people in America, and we couldn't hold a lie straight.
Right.
It's like 6 weeks or something
Right,
like that.
6 weeks. We couldn't hold on to this as a lie. So yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. And when you read the book and you really fully understand it, one of my favorite things to talk about with people is when they come at you and they're like, well, the Bible contradicts itself. I'm like, really? Like, that's fascinating to me, because as somebody who has studied and learned to study the Word, I can tell you with 100% certainty, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. Well, how could a loving God, command Israel to put all these people, just to kill an entire race of people? Like, oh, well, that's a great question. He did that because it wasn't actually a race of people. It was a race of people that had a seed in them that wasn't godly. They were tainted. Like, I want to use the word hybrid, but I'm not going to use the word hybrid.
Yeah.
So It's just fascinating to me. Oh yeah, you found it.
Yeah. Oh, I had to show this one. When you
Yeah.
say the contradictions and you say that, oh, nothing.
This is amazing.
Yes. The first hyperlinked book that was written by multiple people,
For multiple centuries,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Hyperlinked, and you got to keep in mind these people didn't know each other. They had no conversations about it. They didn't know one from the other, and this is harmony.
Yeah. And this is every cross reference in the Bible from front to back.
You
Fulfilled prophecies, and I mean, just
amazing.
yeah.
It looks kind of like a rainbow.
I've been saying for a long time that I wanted to get this printed out and hung in my office.
Yeah, that's a legit print.
I need to find there. I actually downloaded a high res copy of it. There's one online.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Put that baby on canvas.
Yeah, I've
Make
thought
it
about
happen, because it's true. That is probably one of the best visual images of the truth of the Word of God from beginning to end, and how harmonic it is. And when you understand it, when you really understand it, and I say that, people go, I understand it, I read it. Well, reading it and understanding it are two totally different things.
Right.
And so when you really understand context, when you really understand the character, it all of a sudden comes to life and you go, I get it. This is truth. So congratulations if you're one of the millions of people who have purchased a new Bible this year. It'll change you.
And I was going to add one more thing. So this is fairly recently. Well, no, it just wound up being displayed. So the 1800-year-old writing they found it was in Israel that proclaimed Jesus as God.
Oh, yeah. The very first thing on the mosaic.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
It's wild.
It's wild. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, it is 10:15.
Yes, indeed. We went a little over, but that's okay.
We got to wrap it up for tonight. Hey, give a big shout out to our brother Ben right now. They're fighting some things in their house, and they're not fighting. They're fighting some things like, sicknesses,
Illness,
right?
yeah.
Illness. So big shout out to you. Our prayers are with you tonight, buddy. God's got you guys. No worries. And I'd also want to give out a special shout out tonight to my friend Kenny he's from Nebraska. Went in to have some pretty extensive heart surgery today. So still waiting to hear how he's doing, if he's out. And but yeah, we're praying for you, lifting you up, buddy. And hey, as always, if you have questions, if you want us to discuss something, you can drop us a line at thebraverthantheRest@gmail.com. Also, hop on over to Continued Freedom and check all that stuff out. Jared does his own thing. I want to get on there so bad.
I know.
But
We've got to line our schedules up on that
it's
one.
insane.
Yeah.
But
I want to say also for everybody, be sure to hit us up in the comments. So, comment, like, obviously subscribe and hit notification bells, whichever platform you happen to be on.
You don't have to comment. Just type letters.
Yeah.
And hit send. I mean, it counts. It all counts, right?
It all works. It's engagement.
They all look at it and go, oh, yeah. So
this is we talk about some awesome stuff on here, and I think it'd be really cool for you guys that chime in every week to get conversation started about, all this stuff, and we'd love to respond. So.
Well, and I mean, y'all know we shout out to you when you do comment.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So we would love to hear from you. And until next week, keep your eyes to the skies. Our King is returning.